Donald Trump is spiraling, and no one should be surprised. What you're watching right now isn't strength, it isn't strategy, and it definitely isn't leadership. It's panic. Pure, exposed panic. Because after Mark Carney stood on the world stage at Davos and calmly dismantled Trump's pressure politics in front of global leaders, Trump did what he always does when he loses control of the narrative. He lashed out. And this time, the target was Canada. Let's start with what just happened, because it matters. In a Truth Social post, Donald Trump threatened Canada with a 100% tariff on every single Canadian good entering the United States. Not selective tariffs. Not targeted retaliation. Not even a policy framework. A blanket economic threat. And here's the key point, it wasn't because Canada did something wrong. It wasn't about national security. It wasn't about illegal trade. It wasn't even really about China. It was about control. And Trump knows he's losing it. Trump claimed that if Canada moves forward with trade cooperation with China, the US would respond by slamming Canadian exports with a 100% tariff. He accused China of eating Canada alive and painted Canada as a drop-off port for Chinese goods. But let's be very clear here. That wasn't analysis. That wasn't policy. That was intimidation, delivered publicly, designed to scare Canada back into line.
Well, we know it now appears certain, coming out of the Prime Minister's trade trip to China and that widely well-received speech in Davos at the World Economic Forum, that President Trump has Canada in his crosshairs, posting this on social media. If Governor Carney thinks he's going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he is sorely mistaken. China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it. Threatening then, if Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the USA. Carney came out of that meeting with China last week with a preliminary deal to lower tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles coming into Canada in return for lower tariffs on canola products for China.
So why now? Why this threat? Why this tone? Trump isn't reacting like this because of China. He's reacting because he's losing control everywhere. Allies don't trust him. Markets don't believe him. At home, he's under pressure from political opposition and from voters who are exhausted by chaos, reversals, and humiliation on the global stage. And now, something Trump never expected has happened. A country he thought he controlled stopped listening. For decades, Canada followed Washington's playbook. Take the hit. Stay dependent. Don't deviate. Don't challenge. Don't build alternatives. Under Mark Carney, that era ended. Canada diversified its trade. Canada built options. Canada stopped asking for permission from the United States. And Trump sees exactly what scares him most. Canada isn't just trading with China. Canada is positioning itself to build Chinese technology inside Canada. And that's the real threat. Because if Chinese technology and manufacturing start being built in Canada, American automakers don't just lose leverage. They face competition right at their doorstep. Trump wanted Canadian industry dependent on US supply chains. Instead, it's American industry that could take the hit. That's why the threats escalated. That's why the language hardened. That's why this wasn't measured or calculated. This wasn't strategy. This was fear.
Donald Trump is like a metal plate in a microwave. He is just snapping and lighting up and firing in all directions these days. And so it is difficult, as serious as this is, this threat, it's difficult to know how serious you need to take it.
Well, with that said, how likely do you think Carney is to backtrack on the deal?
I don't know if he'll backtrack. That would be very difficult. But I think in some ways this validates the wisdom of trying to get that deal, and that it obviously provides him with some leverage. Trump is telecasting. He is telegraphing that he is bothered by it, even if he wasn't at first instance, even if he didn't have the shrewdness to recognize at the time that this does provide some ballast for Canada.
And here's where Trump's threat completely collapses on contact with reality, his own record. Just days earlier, Trump was asked about Canada signing a deal with China. His response? He said it was a good thing. He literally encouraged Canada to make the deal. Let that sink in. Same deal. Same facts. Same arrangement. Suddenly framed as an existential threat. Nothing about the agreement changed. The only thing that changed was Mark Carney's speech at Davos. That speech mattered. Because at Davos, Carney didn't shout. He didn't insult. He didn't posture. He calmly called out coercion. He spoke about tariffs being used as weapons. He urged middle powers to stand together instead of submitting to intimidation. He didn't name Trump, but everyone in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. And Trump knew it too.
In China, I've just signed trade deals between the two partners.
Well, that's okay. That's what he should be doing. I mean, it's a good thing for him to sign a trade deal. If you can get a deal with China, you should do that.
So then, in the face of U.S. threats to take over Greenland, Carney gave a speech to the World Economic Forum in Davos on Tuesday saying the old world order is over and urging middle powers to unite. So now, an about face and back to the future as well, in the way that you saw him there in that Truth Social post addressing the Prime Minister as Governor Carney. Remember, he used to call Prime Minister Trudeau that when he was talking about Canada becoming a 51st state. It appeared he had a much better relationship with Prime Minister Carney, but not so much anymore.
That's when the tone shifted. That's when the threats escalated. That's when the mask came off. Here's another thing Trump doesn't want people to understand. There is no free trade deal between Canada and China. What exists is a limited, preliminary arrangement restoring pre-tariff conditions on select goods like canola, while reduced tariffs remain in place on Chinese electric vehicles and Canadian agricultural products. This is not Canada selling out. This is Canada managing its economy responsibly, exactly the way the United States does. In fact, the US recently signed its own deal with China, lowering tariffs in exchange for access to American exports. That's why analysts are openly calling Trump's response stunningly hypocritical. When America does it, it's smart policy. When Canada does it, suddenly it's a threat. The math doesn't add up, unless you understand what this is really about. Trump's irritation isn't about China. It's about Davos. At Davos, Carney declared something Trump cannot tolerate. That the old global order built on intimidation, dependency, and fear is over. That middle powers don't need to kneel to survive. That cooperation doesn't require permission. That message landed, with allies, with markets, and inside Trump's own sense of authority. And then Trump did something revealing. He stopped arguing policy and resorted to insult. He referred to Mark Carney as a governor. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't strategy. That was a man grasping for a way to diminish someone he can't counter. When a president stops debating ideas and starts belittling titles, it means one thing. He has no answer. Calling Carney a governor didn't weaken him. It exposed Trump. Because leaders don't talk like that when they are winning. They do it when they are out of moves. And commentators are now saying this out loud. Trump is erratic. He's lashing out. He's attacking allies one day and praising China the next. One analyst described him as a metal plate in a microwave, firing in all directions. Approval ratings falling. Humiliating reversals on Greenland. Public repudiations by allies. This tariff threat isn't a plan. It's a reaction. Trump believes tariffs work because countries are dependent. That assumption no longer holds. Canada has diversified trade. Canada has options. Canada is not boxed into a single market anymore. And Trump just confirmed that reality by showing how threatened he is by Canada's alternatives. Because threats only work when there's nowhere else to turn. And then came the response. Not a press conference. Not a shouting match. Not a rebuttal. A video. Just hours after Trump's tariff threat, Mark Carney released a message focused on one idea: Canada choosing Canada. Buy Canadian. Build Canadian. Invest in Canadian workers, materials, and technology.
With our economy under threat from abroad, Canadians have made a choice to focus on what we can control. You are choosing to put your hard-earned dollars behind Canadian businesses and Canadian workers. Canada's new government is doing the same with our new Buy Canadian policy. We're on a mission to build big, from millions of homes that will improve affordability, to major projects that will transform our economy, to the new military hardware that will protect Canadians and our sovereignty. We will build big with Canadian materials, Canadian steel, aluminum, and lumber, with Canadian technology and with Canadian workers. We can't control what other nations do. We can be our own best customer. We'll buy Canadian, we'll build Canadian. And together, we will build Canada strong.
That timing mattered. This wasn't defiance for show. This was strategy. Carney made something very clear. Canada cannot control what other nations do, but Canada can control itself. By investing at home. By building big projects. By strengthening defense. By supporting domestic industry. By reducing exposure to foreign pressure. That's how you neutralize tariff threats. Not with fear. With resilience. Donald Trump threatened 100% tariffs to reassert control. Instead, he exposed his anxiety. Mark Carney didn't blink. He didn't backtrack. He didn't beg. He reminded Canadians, and the world, that Canada doesn't need permission to thrive. And here's the cliffhanger Trump didn't see coming. When a leader stops reacting to threats and starts building alternatives, intimidation stops working. Completely. And that's exactly what just happened. So the real question isn't whether Trump will escalate again. The real question is how many other countries are watching this moment and realizing they don't have to be boxed in either. If you want clear, no-nonsense analysis of how Canada is standing up in a world driven by threats, pressure, and coercion, make sure you're subscribed. Like this video if you found value in it. Share it with someone who still thinks this is about China. And drop a comment. Do you think this is the beginning of a broader shift away from intimidation politics? Stay with us. There's more coming.